When you think about concentration camps, I bet you'd be thinking Nazi Germany, or the infamous Unit 731 in Japan. But did you know America had its own concentration camp?
Hear their stories. You will now see a few of the sights we saw.
And its story. So horrifying that it's been wiped from history. This is the story of the Devil's Punch Bowl in Natchez, Mississippi. From above, it looks like a dense jungle. But from the ground, it's a green forest waiting to be explored. But hidden here is a dark secret, intentionally ignored by historians and the media: America's death camps. Thousands of freed African Americans were forced into this camp and treated horribly. Experts estimate that in just 1 year, more than 20,000 liberated people died here. Yet much of this history remains a mystery. In school, we learn that in 1863, the Emancipation Proclamation freed enslaved African Americans in Confederate states. Later, after the Civil War, the 13th Amendment ended slavery everywhere in the U.S. This was the start of freedom, but it wasn't that simple. In the South, slavery had been the backbone of the economy. There were 4 million enslaved people who kept the Confederate war effort going. After they were freed, many African Americans faced a new struggle: racism and violence. Southern states quickly passed black codes, laws meant to restrict the rights of freed black people. These laws allowed African Americans to own property and marry, but denied them other basic rights, like testifying against the white or serving on juries. Many were forced to work for white landowners under unfair contracts. Those who refused were arrested or even forced into labor. After the war, life was still very hard for black Americans in the South. Most lived in poverty and had little access to education or fair jobs. Many became sharecroppers, renting land from former enslavers and giving a share of their crops as payment. Some freed slaves managed to take land, but federal troops soon returned it to white landowners. In the years after the war, thousands of freed people left the South, looking for freedom and safety. Some ended up in Natchez, Mississippi, but many of them disappeared, never seen again. They left behind plantations and rural poverty, hoping to find safety and opportunities elsewhere. When they made their way to Natchez, Mississippi, a city that became a symbol of hope for newly freed people, the Natchez population exploded almost overnight, swelling from 10,000 residents to over 120,000 as freed people poured into the area. But the city was unprepared to handle this sudden influx. With limited resources and growing tensions between black and white residents, Union soldiers stationed in Natchez devised a grim solution. They decided to confine the freed African Americans in a makeshift camp, a natural hollow known as the Devil's Punch Bowl. What started as a temporary measure quickly became a nightmare. The camp was surrounded by steep cliffs, making it almost impossible to escape. Soldiers guarded the area, ensuring that no one could leave. Conditions inside were horrific. Men were forced to perform grueling labor under the sweltering Mississippi sun. The heat, combined with a lack of food and water, led to dehydration and exhaustion. Women and children fared no better. They were left to starve or succumb to diseases that spread rapidly in the overcrowded, unsanitary conditions. One of the deadliest diseases in the camp was smallpox, a highly contagious virus that caused fever, fatigue, and painful sores. And with no access to medical care, the disease spread like wildfire, killing countless people. Survivors were forced to bury the dead where they fell, creating mass graves all around the camp. The Devil's Punch Bowl is said to contain 3 mass graves, holding the remains of thousands of men, women, and children who died there. Local residents claim that after heavy rains, bones sometimes resurface, a chilling reminder of the lives lost. Wild peach trees grew in the area, but many locals refused to eat the fruit, believing it to be nourished by the blood of those who perished. While the story of the Devil's Punch Bowl is widely told in local folklore, it remains controversial among historians. Some argue that the site was not a concentration camp but a poorly managed refugee camp where conditions were harsh for everyone, including white residents and Union soldiers. Historians like Roscoe Barnes suggest that the tragedy of the Devil's Punch Bowl has been exaggerated over time, fueled by myths and anti-Union sentiment. Others, however, insist that the site represents a deliberate effort to dehumanize and control freed African Americans. They point to the high death toll, the harsh treatment of prisoners, and the lack of historical documentation as evidence of an intentional cover-up. The story of the Devil's Punch Bowl is rarely mentioned in history books or mainstream narratives about the Civil War and Reconstruction. This is partly because it paints a dark picture of a nation struggling to reconcile its ideals of freedom with the reality of systemic racism. Many believe that this part of history has been deliberately erased to avoid confronting the full extent of the suffering endured by African Americans. The tragedy of the Devil's Punch Bowl serves as a reminder of the long and painful road to equality in America. The freed people who perished there had dreams of building new lives, creating opportunities for their families, and enjoying the freedom they had long been denied. But instead, they were met with unimaginable suffering. Today, the Devil's Punch Bowl stands as both a physical and symbolic reminder of the injustices of the past. While the site itself is overgrown and largely forgotten, its story lives on through those who continue to tell it. By uncovering and sharing these hidden histories, we can honor the lives lost and ensure that their struggles are not forgotten. If you enjoyed watching this video, please leave a like, share, and subscribe to the channel. And if you're new here, you can turn on the notification bell so you'll be notified on our next video.